Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Marla Merritt, and I would like to welcome you to the Q2 2024 episode of Metrics That Matter. We started putting the Metrics That Matter podcast out to the industry probably about early 2023, and we just love the following that we've seen grow with this, because we really do present some great information for our industry, and hope you're listening to the words and thoughts of this great team that we've assembled to bring you some data. A lot of our data comes from Gauge, so we always want to say thank you to Gauge for the information. And then also there's a lot of data that we're using that comes from OrthoFi. So today we have joining us Chris Bentson with Bentson Copple Associates, all the way from the beach. He's taking a little vacay, but we got to make his agenda. Shannon Patterson, also from Bentson Copple, and then Oliver Gillis from OrthoFi. Thank you guys for joining me, and we'll jump right in. I want to start by looking back at Q2 2024. Oliver, I know one theme that we definitely want to cover is the big drop in June starts that the Gauge data revealed. So we'd love for you to talk to us about those numbers, and we'd also like to hear your recommendations on how a practice can win despite this downward trend.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that we're getting this together again. Yeah, so I think everyone is feeling it, whether you know these numbers or not. I'm sure many of you can sense that we're in something right now, and so I hope this is not a shock to too many of you. But what we've seen is that the month of June showed an over 8% drop in total starts. For year to date, that gets us to almost about 3.5% drop. It varies by treatment type, and what many of you, if you've heard me lecture, that I've been hammering and is actually getting worse, which means some of you out there are not listening, is that the adult aligner segment of the business is absolutely getting hammered. And so what we saw in June is the adult aligner starts dropping by over 24% and 18% year to date. That is alarming. It is now, for most of you, almost 20% of your business, and to have 20% of your business dropping close to 20%, that is alone a 4-point drop, if you want to do that math. And so if you think about what is driving the overall drop of 4%, I would point almost categorically to that. There's no question we're going to have some great data in this podcast, in this webinar series about the market and the economy and the impact, and that's definitely happening. But we are self-inflicting some of these wounds. And the causality of why adult aligners is so acutely down, you can say, and you can point to, some of it is we pulled forward a lot of adult case starts during the post-COVID period, but we're now several years clear of it. And so the number one factor that I attribute this to is that practices are still under the mindset that they need to collect the full lab fee as a minimum down payment at a time when the economy is not allowing the average adult consumer to do that. It is full-on sales prevention to require an adult looking for treatment for themselves to put $1,500+ down to get treatment, when all the data says that anything even close to $1,000 is going to decrease your chances by 60%. So there are lots of remedies. We're going to talk about that and how to think about that. We're going to talk about how you deal with demand throughout this call. But that is probably one of the number one things. And I know Shannon is rearing to also point out, the other part of that equation, which is limited treatment.
Right. So the conversion rate is very important, almost more than getting the phone to ring. Would you say that, Oliver?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I've seen anecdotally from talking to a lot of my friends out there is that there is a scramble to try to solve the problem by switching up or hiring a new marketing agency that's going to build a new website or do a lot more digital ads. And as a marketing guy, I'm never going to frown upon marketing. But what I will say is if the economy is what's making the phone ring less, more digital advertising is not going to solve for that, right? So really the effort should be focused on whoever does call in, let's make sure that the phone system is watertight, that you're answering the phones at a maximum level and maximizing that, and that your conversion rate is high, because the gauge data is also showing that we're progressively dropping our case acceptance. And I would basically attribute that to some of that adult issue. So that's where the effort should be going, focusing on that, whether it's getting a consultant in to help you with the conversion rate, whether it's building technology in that's designed to increase your same day starts and conversion rate. Whatever that is, that's where the investment should be well before you invest in making the phone ring.
Yes, right. So Shannon, Oliver, was just talking about the importance of, getting the conversion rate right before we begin to work on getting more patients in the door and more patient scheduling. But let's shift for a minute and talk to us about the ways that you're seeing practices drive the growth more, toward getting those new patients in the door.
Absolutely. I think, that's a big component is the phone is not ringing as much. And so when it does ring, making sure that that's a seamless process, making sure that someone's not having to spend, 10 to 15 minutes on that new patient exam call, that you're getting, the basic information that you need and then sending them that, making sure that those are actually converted. I mean, 90% of that bucket should convert to a consult. And so if you're not looking at those numbers and keeping up with that data, you have a huge leaky bucket there that you really need to look at. And I think that a lot of practices that are working on patient acquisition are doing it more organically versus dumping a bunch of money into a big digital footprint of marketing that way, but just more organic community involvement, referral engagement, going back out to lunch, those kind of things. Those really seem to be the people that are staying steady with their new patient exams, and their conversions are still high. And like Oliver said, I mean, I think a big part of that conversion is the price point. Practices that are still requiring that really big, down payment for a lab fee on an aligner case. They're just missing the boat 1,000%. It's all about flexibility. There's a great time to, there's going to be some months later this year that you can do a big patient drive because of health savings accounts coming up in January. There's a lot of things that you can do and be smart about to get people in the door to get ready for that.
Oh, I love that one, Shannon. That's great insight. So we're talking so far, we've talked really a lot about what's going on right now and how we can do better right now. Chris, you always have the greatest insight on, kind of predictions for our industry for 2025 and beyond. Would love to hear where you think that we're headed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marla. And Oliver and Shannon, spot on. I said in January, I think 24 is going to be Groundhog Day to 23. We're going to kind of relive 23 and 24. It's turning out that seems fairly accurate. To put this maybe in a way that you can remember it, let me share a quick story. In February and March of this year, I went to my wife, Dana, and I said, we're going to our wealth manager, and I think the market's due to drop big time, and we're going to reorganize what we're invested in. And so we did that, and it was a big project. She didn't want to go, and we sat down and they laid out for about an hour in charts and graphs and everything why we should stay invested in the way that we were. And Dana kind of said, "See, I told you so." And I walked away, and I didn't believe him. And so I got two other opinions from two independent wealth managers that I'm not working with. And I said, "Here's how I'm invested. Here's what I'm afraid of. What do you think?" And they said, "You know what? I think you're getting great advice." And I didn't do anything. And if you've looked at the market from March until today, we've hit all-time record highs in the Dow, in the S&P, in the NASDAQ. Apple hit an all-time record high yesterday. And I think to myself, gosh, I'm glad I listened to my advisors and not myself, because I'm notoriously a bad stock picker. I think that's a little bit of what's happening to orthodontists that are listening to this. You're a little bit unsure. You're not really sure what to do. There's a little bit of fear. That's what I had. I had a little bit of fear. I'm telling you, I went back and listened to these metrics that matters since we started them. There haven't been that many of them. I think 6. Find them, listen to them again. There's some great advice on these things. If you want a little bit more concrete evidence of what I think is going to happen, I have a chart that's looked at starts in the orthodontic industry in North America for the last 40 years. There has only been 2 times, well, 3 times. There's only been 3 times in that 40 years that we've had 2 down start years in a row. Okay. The first one was the .com blow up. And the 2 years after that, when we started coming back after 2 years of down starts, we were plus 12%. Okay. The next one is 2007 and 8, which was the housing bubble. And we all remember that one a little bit more because it wasn't that far away. The 2 years bounce back after that, plus 27%. Okay. You may or may not know that the market grows historically in orthodontics 3% year over year. Okay. So double-digit growth the first time, double-digit growth and some the second time. Now we're in 22 and 23 were down years. It looks like 24 likely is going to be a down year. Listen to your advisors. Just like me, I needed to listen to my wealth manager who showed me the historical evidence. This is going to be okay. You're going to get through this. The bounce back is going to be great, and it's going to start in 25. I believe that strongly. The Fed Chairman Powell has indicated he's very optimistic about a rate cut this year. That's going to help. We've been talking about the election on these for the last year. We're only 16 weeks away from that happening. Regardless of which side you're on, that's going to be better. And things are going to get better, and you're going to be growing your practices again. So this is a temporary thing, and I really believe that strongly. And we've been telling you that. Another thing that informs that decision is 2 weeks ago, there was a DICOMA meeting, which is analogous to a OSO, DSO kind of Brainiac meeting. This thing is twice as big as the ADSO meeting right now. It had 2,000 people in it. It was the most well attended. The feedback I received is it had the greatest content. And the tenor of that echoes what I just told you, is that they've done the tough things on the DSO, OSO side. They've made the cuts. The practices aren't growing as fast as they are, but they are outperforming the independent orthodontists by a few percentage points. But they are very bullish that once these rate cuts start coming, when we get past the election and then that inflation ticks below 3%, and Powell said it doesn't have to get to 2% for the rate cuts to happen, things are going to get better. So I think there's a lot of reasons to think that 25, 6, and 7 are going to be great growth years, and I'm very bullish, and I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, so that great speaker lineup that you mentioned at DICOMA included our own Oliver. So he did a great job at that session, and we're going to talk a little bit about the trends in aligner starts kind of in the DSO set. We actually have a solution on the ortho side, for all treatment starts. And it's just interesting how they're looking to grow specialties in their practice. So really want to watch that. We'll talk about that in a minute. I always love hearing this stuff from you, Chris, and it's especially nice that you're predicting future growth and a stronger market. That's good to hear, and we're going to hold on to that hope. But for now, I think we need to continue to explore what practices can do in this current environment to assure success for the remainder of the year. Oliver, we know the phone isn't ringing as much as it used to, and you recently created a series of articles about increasing production despite the drop in inbound demand. So why don't you share some of the key takeaways from that article series with our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I don't want to necessarily tell everyone that their phones are going to ring less. You might be in an area with a growing population. Shannon actually has amazing data on which states and communities are actually growing. So I don't want to necessarily tell everyone that their phones are ringing less, but for the blended average, your phones are likely going to ring less. And so that does not necessarily mean that you should bunker up and, bunker in and stop thinking about your practice or investing or innovating. It's actually the contrary, right? So what the article series that's available and on startmoresmiles.com, what that's about is really distilling the ways that you can increase your production in a year where your volume of starts is in decline. You can still increase production, and there are really three compelling ways, right? One, obviously, is increasing your fees. That does not necessarily mean taking every rack rate at every type and lifting it up, but really being strategic about looking at your portfolio and levels of service and contouring them to get some more upgrades, playing with some of those, maybe reducing the number of levels of service that in blend lifts your rate. There's a number of different strategies that you can employ, but that ultimately increase your fee to the patient, all things equal. And just remember that I just said levels of service, which includes limited treatment, and we'll get to that. But there are really a few different strategies that I could go on forever on, but that's one of the strategies. Obviously, everyone knows that inflation's out there. That means you too can increase fees. It's not the best thing to always be the very last person. So, we still have a small window left to be doing that. So try to think about that. The second thing the second sort of pillar of how to increase your production is to really be thinking critically about your in-network participation. We've done a lot of studies to show that in most cases, in-network participation, in fact, does not have any kind of measurable positive impact on either conversion rate or the CAP new appointment exam rate. So it doesn't actually have a lot of the lifts that are marketed by the carriers. In some cases, if you're in a very specific community where you've got a dominant employer, you probably should be in network with those plans. But you have a lot of opportunity to be selective about getting out of network with some of these carriers, provided that it's not like a Delta where you lose the acceptance of benefits by doing that. But there are strategies that you can employ. And what we've seen in case studies is practices have increased their average fees by anywhere from $350 to $500 on average by simply getting out of network with some of their carriers. Now, I will also say, though, that the carriers are sharpening their claws about making it harder and harder and harder to get out of network. So they're employing increasingly, bullying tactics to get you to be in network, including some crazy things that we've seen where after receiving a claim for a patient, we've seen some carriers actually message them directly that, we see that you've started with Dr. So-and-so. You could have actually had a lower fee had you treated with one of our network doctors, undermining the provider that they are quote unquote working for. So there's lots of really crazy things that are happening. And so, I'm saying two different things. I hope you don't feel like I'm talking out of the two sides of my mouth, but it is, specific. That's why we work with gurus like Tina Byrne, who is the Jedi of these things. But if you are in a situation where you do have to be in network, there are strategies to increase your allowable charge by employing really cool strategies on how you create your claims, how you submit the codes, which codes you submit and when. And what's super cool is from all the learning that we've gotten from working intimately with Tina Byrne, we've actually built and are on the cusp of launching some really cool software as a module for OrthoFi that's called IMAX, that basically acts like a wizard that is going to do this for you and make sure that your claim submission is best practice. And the early case studies that we have conducted with this strategy have shown that the average practice is increasing their claim allowable charge by $350 on their in-network claims, which blends out to about $200 to $250 across all their starts. So that's like saying getting a 5% net increase on all of your production by just doing that one strategy. So you don't have to do all three. You can do one, you can do multiple, but there's anywhere from $350 to $1,000, depending on how much of these you can combine, and think about how much that could mean to your business by thinking of it that way. None of it requires any additional starts. So a lot of cool things when it comes to that. The only thing I will inject that's only slightly askew is back to the whole adult thing, I know why many of you are still requiring the high minimum down, and it is a cash flow concern. Even though we've been preaching forever, the whole aggregate, thinking in aggregate and the blended dot map and things that you've probably seen me prat on about forever, but I understand that it's a leap of faith. And so we're really excited because we've been able to launch a program exclusively with Invisalign called FPT10, where OrthoFi customers exclusively are, have the availability to be part of this program, which allows them to spread their lab fees over 10 months, 30 days following their submission of the ClinCheck. And so that should materially pretty much put a stick of dynamite in the whole concern about cash flow. And it should allow you to have a much more consumer appealing behavior. And by the way, like, do this before the October, re-up on health savings. That would be a perfect time. But hopefully, we've been able to kind of blow that up forever, and hopefully we'll never look back as an industry.
Yeah, and Chris, you and I actually had a conversation about this recently about, how important it is to offer lower down payments, and then the significance of the FPT10 program that Oliver just mentioned. Why don't you share those insights with our audience?
Yeah, I asked Marla earlier today, I said, what's the uptake on FPT10? She goes, surprisingly, not as much as you might think. And we don't really know why. Oliver gave me an idea about why, but just a comment or two on this program. This is 10 months interest-free financing, just like you do with your patients, okay? This is offered by Big Bad Invisalign, and it's offered only to joint clients of OrthoFi and Invisalign, all right? So it's exclusive to that group. If you're an OrthoFi customer and you use Invisalign, in my opinion, if you haven't taken advantage of this program, and you want to grow more and you want to increase your cash flow, it's almost malpractice not to do this. I mean, it's just, this is not care credit. This doesn't have an interest component for your patient. This is simply to increase your cash flow and make it easier for you to allow even more flexible financing than you may be already for your patients. So in a difficult time, you can actually grow. It's a truly, in my opinion, the greatest financing program for aligners from Invisalign that I've ever seen. And I've seen all the ones that they've rolled out over the last 27 years. And so I would say, take another look at that. It's kind of crazy not to use it. What Oliver is telling me is you don't want to use it because you don't want to give up the miles on your credit card. You will make so much money that you can pay for first-class tickets instead of the free coach tickets you're going to get on the, credit card fees you're not spending on this. And so go ahead and do this. Give it a try. I think, what I would couple with it is I do this and I don't care what the patient does for a down payment. Go as low as you want to go because you're not getting hurt cash flow wise. Just a super bright program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, OrthoFi has definitely, with the FPT10 program and the IMAX program, just done some things, to really help the practices in our industry just, kind of change the outlook of where they are from a growth and profitability standpoint. So would love to speak with some practices more about what we've done with those two solutions. Now, we've already touched on the importance of conversion rate based on our slow economy, but there's another issue hitting the ortho-only practice that I think bears some discussion. Shannon, talk to us about the increasing focus the general dentistry market and DSOs are placing on increasing ortho starts in their practices.
So specifically for general practices and general practitioners, increasing that, I think they are just riding the wave from Smile Direct Club kind of closing its doors. So whether we like it or not, that company had 18,000 orthodontic starts per month. And, where did those consumers go? Where did they land? And the fact that our industry still doesn't want to offer limited treatment cases to adult patients who, by the way, 70% of them are retreats anyway, is really hurting our industry. And the practices that we see offering limited treatment options are not having as much pain with those adult starts. If they are going to a general dentist and they've said, hey, we can do a retreat case for $3,500 or $4,000, and then they come to you because their child's in your office and you're saying, oh yeah, we can, fix your teeth, mom, for $6,500. In today's economy, they're probably going to go with the other option. And, technology has just kind of caught up. So more and more GPs are doing that, but they also, don't seem to get so hung up on that fee. They definitely seem to have a better monthly payment for some reason, which, is surprising as long as we've been doing this, that would be the case. But they do. So I think that they've really kind of captured that limited treatment option. I don't think they're chasing adolescents. Chris and I, we were all talking before, and we feel like adolescent patients are always going to land in an orthodontic office, but it's really that adult patient base. So I really kind of think that's where we're seeing the increase on them with general practices doing ortho. It's really those adult retreats that they're capturing. And we're just kind of missing the boat on that. So, it's something to think about.
Yeah, and Oliver, you specifically mentioned kind of from a DSO point of view, there's a lot more, going to be a lot more muscle memory. Kind of, why don't you talk a little bit about the programs that the DSOs are building?
Yeah, I mean, historically, looking at the trends, again, every time that there's an economic crisis or tightness, what we have seen historically is that general dentists, who are doing less dentistry also decide to try to fill that gap by doing more ortho, right? And they will grow their ortho a little bit. And then as soon as the economy comes back, the sort of pain in the butt factor of doing ortho, both clinically and also the revenue cycle management difference between the claims and how to chase the patient payments and all that, sort of like dissuades them from continuing, and they drop it like a vestigial tail, and then it sort of comes back into the specialty space. The difference today is that the technology is better, so the pain in the butt clinically is not as big as it used to be. It's more straightforward. And now, being that, the last time there was a crisis, there was about 10-ish%, 12-ish% consolidation into DSOs. And now we're well into the 30s in terms of the percentage of dentistry being done at DSOs. These DSOs, it's a business venture. And so if they're going to invest in ortho, they're probably not going to go backwards when the economy comes back. And so that sounds very doomsday. I 100% agree with Shannon that we are basically talking about that adult aligner target. But I've also talked in other courses and other, webinars about that's where our growth trajectory lies because of the birth rate and all that. So we got to fight for this market. We got to fight aggressively. We got to think in an innovative way about how to grow our practices. So those are our patients. So if you're just sort of like conceding those patients, those are the patients you're going to really want when the economy comes back. And so I would really change your thought process around that because it's going to get, they're competing for it. They're gunning for it. And so we should compete.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, we're almost about to wrap this up. We always kind of end with a final round of comments from our panel, and we'll go in this order today. I think we'll start with Chris, and then Shannon, you can take it, and then we'll finish it off with Oliver.
I'm at the beach. My dog is barking. Sorry.
We want to be at the beach.
I'll go last.
You'll go last. Okay. We'll start with Shannon and then Oliver and then Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of wrap it up, something we didn't touch on that I'm starting to see is the labor market is definitely getting a little bit better. The return to work in the office policy, has been interesting to watch. I have a child in that space, and she's kind of pitching a hissy fit because, she graduated from college in 23 and really hasn't had to do that, and now she is. And so a lot of people moved far away from their actual workspaces. So I think there's a bigger labor force out there than there has been before. There are people who want to work close to home. Ortho practices are typically fun, and it's a family-like atmosphere. So if you're looking for help, invest back in looking into that. And then the other thing is just making sure that focusing on that patient journey when times are tight like this. I mean, every single patient that calls your practice and that comes into your practice should have the red carpet experience, right? The first impression is often the last impression. So making sure that, every employee you have is really, able to focus on patient engagement when they're in that office is going to be really important. And again, work those referrals, just that organic marketing in the community, and really looking at your limited treatment options, I think for the rest of the year are going to be important.
And Oliver?
It's I'm up. So I mean, it feels like going through this call that we're giving everyone a very doomsday message, and I want to just dispel that notion. I think what I like to do when I approach a situation like this is I want to be very crystal clear and real about the reality of my situation so that I can change my chess strategy. So yes, we should accept that the phones will likely ring a little bit less. Can we counter that with really intelligent and strategic decisions about how to increase conversion rate, how to add levels of service, how to increase production, and all these other things? Can we counter that? Yeah, it's going to take some work. And all I will say is, in a brand new environment, there's no way running the old play is going to address the moment of the new environment. We need new plays. That's why we do these calls. That's why we invest so much in education as a company and as an industry. It's all about giving back to you guys. But you guys, help us help you. Think differently and reach out for help. There are lots of great consultants and people who can help you to form these new strategies, but it is going to take a new playbook. So get after it.
Chris, is the dog still barking?
Well, they may be, but I changed venues, so sorry about that. Hopefully there's some great editing that's going to be able to be done. It's just so nice for me, I kind of age in the profession to hear Oliver and Shannon with such fresh information and know that for the next, several decades, you're going to have them to give you information. I think what Oliver just said is, you can't run the same play again. And so that means you have to learn a new one. And to learn a new one, it means you have to make an investment. Where is that investment going to be? I don't want to sound like a broken record either, but if I'm on this call and the first thing I'm going to do if I'm OrthoFi and Invisalign is I'm going to invest in FPT10. That's just a no-brainer. You should do that. Secondly, if you've been listening to me for any period of years now, I'm going to invest more in digital because I have more time today than I'm going to have tomorrow. And, just like my story of not listening to my gut and not my advisors, and then accepting what my advisor said. If I was advising your office, I'd say, we're going to look at 3 areas in your practice, and they're all digital, and that's going to be patient monitoring, aligners, and digital braces. I know that all those things give the most precious gift back to your practice, your staff, and your patient, and that's the gift of time. And so I know that's where the industry is going. And if you want to get there before you start this nice growth thing that we're alluding to, that I really believe is going to happen, you need some time to figure it out. And so I'm going to invest in 24, 5.5 months left, doing better on one of those 3 legs of the digital scale. And I really am bullish. I don't think it's a wet blanket. The takeaway for me from this call is you got to raise your level of sophistication in how you manage your business. We know you can diagnose and treat. We know you have less people to do that on right now. And so you've got to raise your level of sophistication on how you run your business. If you do that, you'll do just fine. I would end with one last story. I would to press this digital button home hard. I was on a call last night with 26 doctors. All very, very digital. And that's really where my time is being spent right now to truly try to understand this data. To a doctor, all 26 practices in 2024 were up over 4%. Okay, 100% of them. I see that anecdotally. I can't prove it because we're not valuing a lot of those practices. They're younger doctors, but digital is speaking to the consumer. And if you listen to Oliver and Shannon and say, listen, you can invest in a marketing program, but the return on that is really nebulous and hard to figure out. But if you invest in your patient referrals, your recall list, the people that are actually calling in, and you have a digital response or answer for them, I think you're going to grow, and you got to learn how to do that better.
Right. Yep. Digital all the way around the whole entire patient experience. Love that. So great episode today, you guys. So great to be with you again. Thank you, Chris, Shannon, and Oliver. Thank you to our listeners who've joined us again, and we will see you in another quarter. Thank you.